Hey everyone, SC Terracon here, and I just came out of the theater from watching Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the third installment to the Sonic movie franchise, which we can now call the Sonic movie trilogy. In this new installment, Team Sonic must face a new adversary known as Shadow the Hedgehog, and once they find out how threatening this new villain is, Team Sonic is led with no choice but to make an unlikely alliance to protect their planet. Now, before I start my non-spoiler and spoiler review, we need to discuss some very interesting Sonic the Hedgehog news. Earlier in the morning, Variety came out with an exclusive article confirming that Sonic the Hedgehog 4 is in fact in the works, and it currently has a release date of spring 2027. Now, for starters, this is a little different. This isn't the 2-year time span that we usually get for the movies, and this isn't a bad thing. Jeff Fowler and the crew have been working so hard for the past 4 years making these movies, and I think giving them a break is definitely necessary. So if anyone from the Sonic 3 team are watching this, take a break. I'm fine with it. Just take a break. Y'all have been cooking too hard. But other than that, let's get into the review. So, starting off with the positives, the story was very, very well written. What I mean by this is that the story is very well balanced when it comes to both sides. There is the main side of the story where it's much more humorous, much more wholesome, and I think that's fine with Sonic 3 because Sonic 3 doesn't have to be a dark and gruesome movie because Shadow the Hedgehog is included in it. All that really matters is how you do it, and I think the team really did a good job at mixing both kind of elements. And speaking about the other side where there are serious moments is so well done. There are moments in this movie that you really feel the emotion of the character. You really feel that they are struggling, that they are really angry or upset. You can really feel the emotion these characters are going through, and I think that the writing team and the director and everyone on the crew did an amazing job bringing this story to life, because literally this story was 100% written in golden ink, just like Jim Carrey said in an interview. But now moving on, let's talk about the action of the movie. Oh my god, my friends, this movie's action scenes go above and beyond compared to its predecessors. Like many other reviewers have stated, the action scenes for this movie feel so much like a Dragon Ball episode. Like, there are moments in these action scenes that made my jaw completely drop to the ground because of how intense these battle scenes were. Like, I'm sorry if I'm talking about the battle scenes even more, but man, compared to the last movie's battle scenes, these are much more insane and much more intense and much more powerful compared to the last one, because the cinematography and the choreography on these characters, woo, y'all are missing out, man. And now let's move on to the next thing, and that is the characters. Team Sonic in this movie felt so much better compared to how they were in the second movie. Now, I know in the second movie they were introducing or building up to that Team Sonic point, but besides the whole Team Sonic thing, each character in the second movie felt a little off, especially Sonic. And I get that he's still maturing and, realizing what's right, what's wrong, but he was so weirdly written that it really ticked me off at times. And I can also say the same thing with Tails, Tails in the movie was mostly like, only Sonic the Hedgehog can do stuff like this. And Knuckles he wasn't much of a problem. He was actually pretty hilarious. Though I would have liked more interesting dialogue from Knuckles, I was still pretty satisfied with movie 2. But when we move on to movie 3, oh my god, these characters are so much more well written. They have much more interesting conversations. They have much more nicer heart-to-heart moments, and sure, they still make their pop culture jokes. It's not to the point where you hear it every 24 seconds and you just start to go insane or you get annoyed. These characters have much more nicer dialogue, and I'm actually much more thankful that they went out of their way and changed a few things. I would even go as far as to say that Sonic has truly changed compared to the second movie. In the second movie, he was much more childish, and sure, that was the whole point of Sonic 2. It was really to make Sonic grow a little, to understand a little more. And in this new installment, Sonic truly has changed. He is much more matured, and sure, he still makes some funny jokes here and there, but still, he is starting to become the Sonic we all love and know, and I am so thankful that the team are really making these characters grow and understand. Moving on to more characters to talk about, Eggman and Gerald Robotnik were so hilarious in this movie. You could really tell that Jim Carrey was having a blast playing these two characters, and so was I having a blast watching him play these two characters. But what really surprises me is that how Jim Carrey can play two completely drastic characters. When Jim Carrey plays Eggman, he's much more comedic, much more hilarious, much more villainous, but when he plays Gerald, he keeps the villainous but he also tends to go a little bit more matured, a little bit more serious, because again, this is Gerald Robotnik we are talking about. You know, this is the guy from SA2, the one who got shot by a firing squad. But I'm still incredibly surprised of how Jim Carrey could really go on a deep level of seriousness to a surprisingly high level of funniness. And now moving on to the final positive thing of the movie, Shadow the Hedgehog himself. Did they do this character justice, or did they ruin the character of Shadow forever? And guys, I am proud to say this, Jeff Fowler and the crew did not miss with this character. In this movie, Shadow the Hedgehog is, again, like always, serious, broody. He is much more sentimental at times, but man, those sentimental parts really did get the most of me. Keanu, as always, did an outstanding performance as Shadow. He made sure that the character sounded angry, broody, and even at parts, even upset, and I think Keanu absolutely mastered that. But I do have one little nitpick about Keanu's voice as Shadow, and that small little nitpick is that at times Keanu does sound a little stiff as the character. Sometimes there are moments at time where I think he could really make himself sound more angry or more upset. But most of the time, Keanu does an amazing job as Shadow the Hedgehog, and I'm just wishing or hoping he comes back for another movie, or even a spin-off, man. I'll take a spin-off. But now that we've covered the positives, let's talk about the negatives. And you guys would be surprised, but I only have one negative thought about this movie. And that is the pacing. The pacing at times does feel a little bit quick. The beginning of the movie felt incredibly fast, and I feel like they should have slowed it down a little more, maybe give it a little bit more of an extra runtime to really go in depth with the moment. Because if audience members are being rushed with all this amount of stuff, they might feel a little overwhelmed. But with the final product that we got, I still think it is enjoyable, and it is just amazing to watch these characters do what they do. Now that we got everything covered, what do I think about Sonic 3 permanently? Sonic 3 goes above and beyond, and not only does it succeed its predecessors, but it succeeds other video game adaptations. You can clearly tell that the people behind this movie truly have a passion for Sonic the Hedgehog, and I cannot wait for what they have in store in the future. So I'll be giving this movie a solid 9 out of 10. Now that I've talked about the non-spoiler side of the video, let's talk about the spoiler side, so take this as a warning to click off the video. Have you clicked off yet? Alright, let's talk some Sonic 3 spoilers. The first thing I want to get off my chest is Shadow's origins. Shadow's origins in the movie have completely changed compared to the video games. In Sonic Adventure 2, Gerald Robotnik created Shadow to make a cure for Maria since she was ill. And within the movie, that is all completely different. Shadow the Hedgehog originates from a meteorite that hit in Oklahoma. And within the movie, Maria is not ill, she just followed wherever Gerald went. And I honestly don't mind this new version of his origins. It's not exactly something I was expecting. I was expecting more of the traditional kind of roots, but hey, I'm all in for anything different. But now that really brings the question, where does Shadow originate from? And the first thing that comes to my mind is that he's most likely from the Black Doom army. My theory is that in favor for a Shadow spin-off, they might save the big reveal that Shadow the Hedgehog was a Black Doom experiment. He was made so that Black Doom could achieve a more powerful form and become Shadow the Hedgehog himself. But it is very interesting that they did change the story up, and I just can't wait to see where this goes. The next thing I want to talk about is the Shadow and Maria moments in the movie. I found those parts very beautiful, very wholesome. The conversation that Maria and Shadow had when looking up to the stars was just absolutely beautiful. And for those wondering if Maria got shot by a bullet, sorry to break the news, but she didn't. It turns out that a gun soldier accidentally shot a tank and it exploded, thus killing Maria Robotnik. And I can see a lot of fans being a little disappointed in this, but then again, this is a PG movie. It was genuinely expected that they were going to change her death in a completely different way, so not very surprising to me at all. And the next thing I really want to talk about is the music. Junkie XL, I owe you a small apology because man, the music, the soundtrack was absolutely amazing. He listened to some of our criticisms and added the video game soundtracks onto the movie, which I think was fantastic. Although he didn't add too much video game soundtracks into the movie, I still thought it was enough to really put a smile on my face, and it truly made the moment much more better for me. Thank you so much. The next thing I want to talk about is the Sonic vs. Shadow fight. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. The Super Sonic vs. Super Shadow fight was one of, if not the highlights of the movie. The moment these characters threw punches or blocked punches, it felt so much like a Dragon Ball fight. And we didn't even notice it, but one of the shots in the trailers was actually edited so that it could hide the big reveal, and my jaw dropped at the moment I saw that. I was incredibly surprised with the outcome. Another thing I found very awesome about the fight was that they did a little cool reference to Injustice's moment where Superman does the crazy animation where he repeatedly punches in the sky while flying incredibly fast. That was unexpected, but I thought that was pretty cool. And the final thing I want to talk about is not only the mid-credit scene, but the post-credit scene. But let's talk about the mid-credit scene here. In the mid-credit scene, we see Sonic finishing the race and ends up at New York State Park, in which he says he might have overshot the finish line, when out of nowhere a streak of lightning appears and we get our first look at Metal Sonic. For those who are unaware of who or what Metal Sonic is, in the games, Metal Sonic is a robotic version of Sonic made by Dr. Eggman. He was created to not only copy Sonic's move, but to kill Sonic the Hedgehog, thus becoming the one and only Sonic. And we get an even more shocking reveal that there is not just one Metal Sonic, but multiple of them. This scene gave off a lot of Terminator vibes, and I really like that, but the next part is even crazier. The next part of the scene, we get to see a hammer fly around destroying all the Metal Sonics, and thus we are revealed to Amy Rose being in the movie. For a while, fans were speculating that Amy was secretly in Sonic Movie 3 and would play a huge and important role, but turns out that she just became a cameo in the post-credit scenes, and I like that. I like that a lot more, because if Amy and all the other characters were jam-packed into this film, we would have another Spider-Man 3 scenario where there's too many things happening at once and it really just needs to slow down. But now that we know about the mid-credit scene, we can make a few speculations on what Sonic 4 could be like. My guess is that Sonic Movie 4 might adapt Sonic CD and a little bit of adventure, but that's my guess. Let me know what you guys think Sonic 4 will be like. And finally, talking about the post-credit scene, it turns out Shadow did not die. For those who are unaware, in the end of the movie, Shadow the Hedgehog sacrifices his life to push the Eclipse Cannon away from Earth so that the radioactive energy doesn't kill off humanity. And I am super excited to see what they do with Shadow, because a while ago it was rumored that we might be getting a Shadow spin-off movie or series depending on the success of Sonic Movie 3. And I would absolutely love that idea, because in Sonic Movie 3, Shadow is still pretty mysterious. We don't really know where he came from. We don't know the entire situation at that gun facility where Maria and Gerald were at. So making a Shadow spin-off movie might actually be a good idea, so that they can actually explain some stuff that we are yet to know about this version of Shadow the Hedgehog. But that's my entire review on Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Tell me, what do you think about Sonic Movie 3? Did you enjoy it? Did you find it disappointing? Are you excited for the Sonic Movie 4 and the possible Shadow spin-off? Comment down below. But anyways, guys, I'm going to be editing the next video that's all about Sonic Movie merch, so stay tuned for that. That's all I have to say. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.